Project-based learning focuses on developing critical thinking and problem-solving skills in the students. Its inquiry-based method of learning to solve the problems given as projects to the students is a style of active learning.
The way we sometimes done it in the past is just the teacher would say something and then or write something down, and then we'd copy what she wrote, like notes kind of. But then and then we would just like look at our notes and we would like have an open note test or something. But then PBL is different and more fun because you are actually building, and like it's a hands-on experience.
I have a student this year whose academic skills are not at the highest level, and he struggles often with pencil paper, those standard academic skills that we would consider school. But when we do PBL projects and STEM type projects, he is a shining star, and he has that ability to show what he knows and to show what he can do in a different setting.
So after a couple of years of doing PBL, one of the things we started to focus on is 21st century skills. That problem solving, collaboration, creativity, communication. And what we discovered is that we think students really need to be explicitly taught those skills. So this year we focused on that, and we created these rubrics to share with students so that they could self-evaluate what they're doing, and also so that they know what it looks like or sounds like to collaborate. The other thing is that we specifically said we're going to do some short PBLs where that's the focus, where the content isn't necessarily the focus, it is the 21st century skill. It kind of creates a vocabulary for kids to use.
Well, we're just like really good at communicating, and whatever anyone needs, we try to help each other.
Yeah, if someone has a question or someone hasn't gotten something, then we all try to solve that problem. And earlier today we had a little problem, but right away we got on it and tried to fix it.
One of the things that we've definitely learned as teachers is maybe how to balance at the elementary level, the basics that students need to learn, as well as how that fits into a PBL.
When you're doing the project, you can't make your thing work, or sometimes you can, but you need to know how to make it, and to know how to make it, you have to know how it works. And so then you have to learn what's behind it and what's actually making it work.
For our current PBL, we really challenged ourselves to dive into resources to kind of back up that launch, but also really get kids understanding how this applied to living that life of that explorer. And so I got on Twitter one day and I tweeted out to like 30 people saying, here's our driving question, here's our project idea, can you come up with something to help us? And a lot of organizations didn't answer back, and that's okay. But several did, and a few of them I feel like we're probably gonna pair up with next year, just because, timing of when we sent this out and their resources themselves. The Topeka Zoo tweeted back and was like, yeah, we wanna do that. And so they sent out one of their educators, and they led a really awesome, right away, it was our second or third day on the PBL, and they talked to the kids about decomposition and how long it takes for styrofoam to decompose. It really got our kids passionate and on their own terms, and it's really got our brains going of how can we reach out to community experts even more in the future for PBLs.
One of the great things about PBL is that it is inquiry based, but as a teacher what we've learned is that you have to find kind of that balance between what level of inquiry your students are ready for. So it could be more guided.
So we are seeing if how much softness we need for it not to break, but how much softness we need it to break.
It could be more student-driven and a combination of teacher-guided and student-guided.
we decided to start here and really examine this picture. And so yesterday, we talked about what are our initial thoughts about this common and famous depiction of the first Thanksgiving and what do you notice?
That higher level of inquiry in PBL, the students are really making most of the choices.
Our class just finished a project where they researched about a US region and then did a PBL where they created a fair. And there was 2 questions that they had to answer with their region's fair. The first was how can they inform people about their region, and then how could they create an interesting and attractive booth for visitors.
The launch, I feel like, is one of the most fun parts about PBL because you really get to set the stage with your students. And you get to kind of gauge that excitement right away. Like, are they fully invested from the beginning like you hope they are? Or is it going to take a little bit more to kind of strike their interest because maybe the topic is something they haven't heard of? It doesn't have to be intricate. It can be as simple as posting a picture on the board and saying, what are the things we notice about this? On the other side, though, it can be really intricate and your kids can take on a role. And so our current PBL is our students are answering the question of how, as informational writers, can we create a magazine to inform our community about protecting our oceans? And we are taking on the role and living the life of a National Geographic explorer, and it's really awesome. Me and my team typed up a letter, and we had Elton Explorer from National Geographic mail the letter to our students, and so our class got mail one day.
Our role is to not only teach, but explain why we should love our world.
And at first, the kids were real excited that they got mail, and they were kind of like, what is a magazine? And so after that launch of getting them excited and interested, we studied magazines, and that's when they really fell in love with it. And then they got their badges, and so they wear their badges every day. And that's where kind of that role play goes into a little bit, especially at the primary grades. But the reason I loved the badge is because it's almost like we launch every day. If you don't get them excited about the process to begin with, it kind of almost defeats the purpose of the PBL, because we're really trying to take that real world aspect, that inquiry piece of like, why would I want to answer this question? And this is where you can really drive it home.
We say project-based learning integrates knowing and doing. When students apply what they know to solve an authentic problem with the intention to produce results that actually matter.
We are working on a large dog, so that's our project that we picked.
Basically, we're just adding up all the total costs. Like, we looked up on different stores and what that would cost like per year and how many times you would have to buy a new thing like food. Well, first we researched for our book, and we researched about states, just about the regions, resources, first people, tourist attractions. This was pretty neat. The Hershey's factory. There's a town called Chocolate Town, and there's a Hershey's Park, and well, I thought that was pretty neat.
Making the book was the next step, and so we had to kind of cut it and glue it onto the book. I as well used Google Slides to type up all my information. Then my teacher printed it out, and I glued it onto here. So I cut it and then I glued it onto my book.
The presentation allows students to show off what they've learned. Students can do this in a variety of ways. A multimedia presentation,
UCR. It's amazing.
a different format for your peers,
We made like kind of like a fair for the last part to present it. We presented it to third grade with their teeny tiny books. It was really fun to see other people and what they thought of what we were done.
Whatever best complements the project that you're working on.
We are constantly talking as a team every time we meet. We meet on Thursdays and we say like, okay, here's where I am in the process with my kids. I have some kids already ready for this next step and some kids aren't. You know, we've checked in and this is what's working for this group. But along the way, we'll think of, oh, we could have asked this organization. And so we like write it down in our calendar for planning for next year. And we say, okay, we'll reach out to them. Some of them we've already reached out to. And so that's been really powerful in that sense of, yes, you're always thinking about next year, because as you're going through the PBL, you think about how can I make this more relevant, because it's going well in the classroom. And so like when we first wrote the PBL, we had no idea that we were going to try to reach out the community. But through our training and through talking with our team, we were like, wait a second. If we're really going to have kids live this life, they have to be able to reach adults that have done that.
We started this journey with PBL. We did go through training, and we collaborated with another school in the district as we were learning. And over the past few years, each grade level has worked on developing PBLs. We started with 1, and then we went to 2, and then we keep building on what we've done in the past. As teachers, we have to reflect on how it's worked and what we can improve and do that. And so that's kind of where we're at now after a few years.
It's hard to constantly be thinking, but we do it as teachers anyway, as natural. It kind of shakes you up a little bit, because I think sometimes we get into this routine as educators, like, oh, you know, this works really well. We do the same things at the same time, at the same month, every school year. And with constantly thinking with PBL, you can't get comfortable like that. In the sense of, you know, next year you might have students that are ready for a PBL at the time that you have it planned, and sometimes you might not. Like, for instance, this year we had a PBL planned for right after break, and it was evident that our kids were not ready to dive into research at that time, so we had to push it back a couple weeks.
You do need to know your students, and your students can change over time too. So maybe something that works at the beginning of the year doesn't work at the end, and you can let them go and have more freedom as they, you know, learn more about how to go through that process of inquiry in PBL.
We get to design our ideas, and then we get to make them, and then like do stuff with them that helps us learn, but also is fun.
I think that PBL really teaches you like how much that you can do already, even though you might not think that you can do much.
Yeah, it's, even though we're kids, some people might think that we're not being able to do, we won't be able to do much, but it actually makes a huge difference.